Welcome to the Leaders Insights podcast. Today's episode, AI liability is no longer theoretical. What governance gaps cost companies now? Regulators spent years writing frameworks. Now they're writing fines. What's the actual cost of being unprepared in 2026?
It's substantial and accelerating. The EU AI Act enforcement window opened in earnest this year, and we've already seen a mid-sized German financial services firm face a 4.2 million euros penalty for deploying a credit scoring model without the required conformity assessment. That's not a headline number, but it was enough to trigger a contract review from their largest institutional client, who walked. The fine was the smaller loss.
So the reputational and commercial fallout can dwarf the regulatory penalty itself.
Consistently, when a procurement team at a Fortune 500 company now issues an RFP, AI governance documentation is a standard requirement. If you can't produce an auditable model card, a bias testing record, or a human oversight policy, you're disqualified before price is ever discussed. That's a structural market shift, not a compliance checkbox.
Where are most companies actually falling short? Because everyone claims they have an AI governance policy.
Having a policy document and having operational governance are two different things. The gap I see most often is that models get deployed, and then nobody owns what happens next. A policy written in 2024 doesn't account for model drift, updated training data, or a new use case the business unit decided to bolt on 6 months later. Governance has to be continuous, not a one-time sign-off.
Give me a concrete failure mode from this year.
A retail bank in Singapore, I won't name them, but this is publicly documented through the MAS enforcement notices, used an LLM-based customer service system that had been fine-tuned on outdated product terms. Customers were given incorrect interest rate information. The model had drifted from ground truth, and nobody had a monitoring protocol in place to catch it. The liability wasn't just regulatory, it was direct consumer harm, and that triggers a different and much more aggressive legal exposure.
So model monitoring is the operational gap. What does a functional monitoring program actually require?
At minimum, 3 things: a defined owner accountable for each production model, a scheduled cadence for performance and fairness audits, quarterly at minimum for high-risk applications, and an incident escalation path that reaches legal and compliance before it reaches the press. The companies that handled incidents well this year had pre-written response playbooks. The ones that didn't were improvising in front of journalists.
We're seeing enforcement across the EU, Singapore, and now state-level action in the US. Is there a coherent global standard emerging, or are companies managing 3 separate regimes?
3 separate regimes, but with meaningful overlap in the core requirements: transparency, human oversight, and documented risk assessment. Build your governance stack around those 3 pillars, and you cover roughly 80% of what any regulator will ask for.
One thing a senior executive should do this week:
Pull a list of every AI system currently in production and identify who is personally accountable for each one. If you can't answer that question in 48 hours, that's your governance gap.
To go further, Leaders Insights offers strategic training programs, diagnostic tools, and an executive self-assessment designed for CMOs, CDOs, CFOs, and leaders aiming for board-level performance. Explore everything at mba-training.com. Thank you for listening to the Leaders Insights podcast. See you tomorrow for another episode.